This one's mine. Olivia Rose Austin. Yes. Told you we'd get there. All right. Anyways, Olivia Rose Austin was the modern show princess. I think this is where. Oh yes, this is where I'm starting to get my multiple certificate winners.
So I should explain the certificates represent specific categories designated by the American Rose Society, and they are typically standard in every show that's authorized by the ARS. So that's why we have these certificates. So it's a pretty big deal to get a certificate.
Complete with an emblem seal. All right, so silver certificate for Miniature King, silver certificate for Floribunda Spray, best mini flora open bloom, and the best miniature spray are all awarded to Mike Jepson for Fairjoy, Sweet Vivian, Queen of Hope, and Elfinglow?
Elfinglow.
Elfinglow, okay. No, it wasn't gonna. Those are all by Mike Jepson. We're gonna.
And he's not here tonight either.
Yeah, business.
Yeah.
All right.
Tempe, actually.
All right, somebody who is here
Aha!
won the gold certificate for a Floribunda spray called Dusky Maiden, and the silver certificate Modern Shrub King for Golden Wings goes to Les Haight.
And then the rest go.
All right. We also award certificates for arrangements. So if you see me with the pink one, those are the arrangements. And for a chorus line, it goes to Diane Palpovich. Don't go far.
Don't go far.
As she walks away from me.
Yeah.
All right. So.
The other 17, good.
Yeah, the other 17. All right. So Diane and her husband Lou do exhibit together, and they won a silver certificate King of Show for Cajun Sunrise, bronze certificate Princess of Show for Neptune. Those are hybrid teas, by the way. Gold certificate Miniature Queen for Joy, a bronze certificate Miniature Princess for Ali Shiba, gold certificate Mini Flora Queen for Showstopper. It's a very pretty rose, by the way.
It's pink. She likes pink.
I might be biased. Silver certificate Mini Flora King for Miss Mabel. Bronze certificate Mini Flora Princess for Buttercream. Best Rose Bowl for Large Bloom Ring of Fire. And the Best Rose Bowl Miniature Bloom for Joy. I'll go to Lou and Diane. All right, my last stack. We have the Best in Show for Mo and O, a gold certificate for Queen of Show for Brooks Red, gold certificate Modern Shrub Queen for Belle Story, personal favorite, Best Floribunda, one bloom per stem for Frida Kahlo, sometimes I have trouble pronouncing names, forgive me. Best Floribunda was that one, Most Fragrant Rose for Mr. Lincoln, the Best English Box for Alatissimo, and then a gold arrangement certificate for South Pacific, and a silver certificate for a miniature arrangement for Flower Drum Song. I'll go to Mr. President, Terry Swartz.
All right.
I'd like to thank the Academy.
All right, and I do thank everybody who did come. It's a lot of fun, and I do encourage you guys to look into exhibiting next year. So, thank you.
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Les, do you want to come up and give the dog and pony before you give the dog and pony?
We're doing it.
I think we're gonna do dog and pony, so.
Okay, well,
Let's just do it as one thing.
one dog and one pony.
Yeah.
No tricks. Okay, Mr. Vice President, would you come up and introduce the peoples?
Right here?
No, that's good.
Okay, we're at the time of year where we gotta think about summer care. And right now is the time you really have to think about that. And Les Haight and Diane Pavlovich are gonna have a panel discussion right here and invite all your questions about what curious questions you have about getting your roses through the summer and thriving, not just barely getting through and losing half of your leaves or 3/4 of them, and then they're almost on their deathbed at the end of September. You don't want that. You want them to get through where you have a full set of leaves and they have growth continuously through the summer. It's not going to be as dynamic as it is in spring or late fall, but anyway, Les he owned Greenbelt Nursery in Green Valley for many, many, many years, and I don't know how many thousands of roses that he sold, but he is the resident expert on rose care. I mean, he knows every little trick in the book. Diane, she has grown roses for over 40 years, and she's got a pretty good idea what to do too. But anyway, come on up, and then you can tell what to do this month and through the summer.
You guys want to sit or stand?
I think we'll sit probably.
Well,
Okay.
if everybody can hear us, we'll. Are we on candid camera?
You are now.
All right.
You are, you know.
Okay, the first thing we're going to talk about is water, and, which is, of course, the most important survival tool for the summer. And I don't know if any of you have been reading the internet, looking at any newspapers or hearing the news, but California, the Los Angeles area is now on very strict water restrictions starting June 1st. You can water outdoors 1 day a week for approximately 8 minutes. That's what some of the water companies are telling people.
Yep.
The only exception for outdoor watering will be trees, because they want to keep the tree canopy throughout the county alive if they can, but no lawns and very limited watering on your plants. So that's something to think about.
I don't think we're far behind.
Yeah,
We're not too far behind, I don't think. Also, we have an election coming up, and we're gonna be electing new governor and state legislators. So read on all of their websites what they say they want to do with water and how they want to manage it. Because some of them have plans and some don't. So understand who you're voting for. The prediction from the National Weather Service from Phoenix is that we should have a fairly decent monsoon, but then of course we know the weather service is always questionable in terms of what they say. But last year we got record rain in July. But so far this year, what did you say we have?
Since the first of the year, we've had point at the airport where nobody lives, 0.68 inches. So we've had 2/3 of an inch of rain in over 5 months. And since October 1st, we've had 2.02, I think it is, or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's hardly worth even mentioning. And it's, when you have that long a period of very little rain, whatever extra moisture we got in July last year that soaked in it's completely dissipated by now. There's nothing in. So anything you're watering, you are only watering whatever space you're watering. 6 inches away, it's just as dry as this table.
So I have pots. All mine are grown in large pots, these big 24-inch pots. And so all the water is concentrated. We water by hand. We don't have a watering system or anything, so we're out there every day. In the afternoon, when the sun is setting, that's when we go and water. And I think that's, for my purposes, I think that's the best time of day to water, because it gives the plants overnight to kind of rejuvenate from the day and be ready to go during the heat. So Les has experienced.
My roses are all in those big pots also. These are 24-inch pots made by a company called TerraPot. They are UV stabilized. I have some of these that are 10, 12 years old, maybe even older. They may be ugly, but they haven't fallen apart. But they get, and they have quite a few drain holes in the bottom, so they drain very well. Sometimes you find great big pots that have one drain hole about this big, and they just, those get plugged up with roots or anything, they don't drain well at all. So these drain really well. And this is pretty much what we would suggest that you use for a hybrid tea or grandiflora for a mother. And then this is a 20-inch, and that's probably adequate for a miniature.
Let's explain how long these will last, because people, they'll get regular pots in town that are plastic and they'll last a year.
Yeah, well, these, like I said, I've had them that lasted, they're 10 and 12 years old. And every once in a while I think, I'm not gonna get another year out of it, and I kind of pull on the rims, and if the rim doesn't come off in my hand, it's got another year in it. So, and then every once in a while you go pick one up and you end up with a little donut. So, but they last, sorry about that, but they do last a really long time.
And where do you get them?
Well, I've been ordering them for people from California, and my source is still there. The last ones I ordered about 6 weeks ago ended up being about $33 or $34, but I think the suggested retail on them is close to $50.
Yeah, I think at Mesquite, they're selling them for about $50.
Yeah, Mesquite, or Retail is 55, even Home Depot, which is not the same thing.
It's not the
is-
same pot.
No, it's not even close, and they still want 50.
Yeah.
Hey, Les, are those the same pots that used to be made by Acro Mills, or is that the
Yeah.
same company?
Yeah, it's TerraPot, it's Acro Mills.
Is Acro Mills?
Yeah, it's the same company.
That's the brand name?
Yeah, TerraPot is Acro Mills is the manufacturer, but TerraPot is the line of pots.
Okay.
But you do not have to grow roses in containers, you can grow them in the ground. At our old house, we used to have a lot of them in ground. The thing is, I suggest that you get a water meter and check to make sure, especially if you have drip. People used to always do was just 2 per bush, but I think 3 is almost the optimum.
Yeah,
as far
I've
as
seen a
litters.
lot of them with one dripper right next to the trunk.
Right.
And drip systems are great if they're installed right and run right, properly. But they're usually poorly installed and poorly operated, either by personal operator error or the quote-unquote landscaper who knows little or nothing maybe about drip systems. And if you have a drip system where you have a fairly long run with a number of drippers on it, the pressure is going to drop
Right.
as you get out toward the end. And the only way you can really tell how much water you're getting is to go out there with like an empty water jug or milk carton or something. Put the emitter in there, see how long it takes to get a gallon of water in it. You know, it may say on the little thing 1 gallon per hour, but you may be getting maybe even as little as even a quart. And by the time you get to the end of the run, you're almost getting nothing because the pressure is so unequal.
And I always suggest to people, especially if you're putting down any kind of fertilizer, that you need to flood your beds or hand water them if you're using a drip irrigation system, to make sure that the fertilizer is actually getting down into the root zone of your plants, and do that at least once a week or after you have applied the fertilizer.
If you have good soil and you're watering it properly, put 3 emitters around each bush. Put them out 12, 15 inches from the bush, even 18. Because if they've got the opportunity to grow a good root system, the root system is gonna be pretty much the same as what's above ground. So if you've got a bush that's 3 feet wide and 5 feet tall, if the soil's good and you're watering right, that's pretty much what the root system's probably gonna look like. Most people here don't have soil deep enough to put roots down 3 or 4 feet because our soil is so lousy in most places. Lou?
Now, what watering system do you prefer that's on a timer? Because I know you install a whale of a lot of them in Green Valley and other places, and you finally threw up your hand and you said you like bubbler systems the best.
Right.
For sprayer systems, instead of the ones where it's just dripping all the time.
Right.
Which ones do you like and why?
Well, I still like basically a flood watering system. Hard pipe, hard PVC, white pipe with nipples sticking up and a bubbler, adjustable bubbler that can spread the water out under the entire bush. It just gives you much better coverage. You don't get quite as much pressure loss unless you're trying to put 25 or 30 bubblers on a line. And you can do what's called a closed loop system, but most people don't have the space where your water comes off your source, and it splits out and it goes around and it ties to itself somewhere out here. So that tends to equalize the pressure better within the system. But the main thing is to run your system long enough. Check with the gallon thing. If you're running it for an hour and it's only half a gallon of water on a nice big rose bush is not even, I would say 3 to 5 gallons per watering is probably minimal.
So you want to preserve the moisture that you do give your roses, so you need to apply mulch. In our case with the pots, we use a product called Grow Mulch, which is, you can buy at Lowe's or Home Depot. And that's kind of what we put on. Usually we just have to just put a little dressing of it. We don't really worry about it too much, but what would you suggest for those that are in ground?
I think something like Grow Mulch is fine. I would not use the wood chips, which you don't see around here much anymore, but you used to see it everywhere. You know, they look great the day they go on, but the more the sun hits them, they get kind of gray and ugly. They're a great breeding ground for cockroaches and other sorts of little ground crawlers that you might not want in your house. But a finer, fairly fine ground composted mulch, almost, if it's fairly well composted and ground up, it's fine. If it's real coarse, and it's not broken down very much, it tends to suck the nitrogen out of the soil because it's constantly trying to break down and it uses nitrogen to decompose. So, you know, any kind, don't use peat moss, it'll just blow away, it'll just disappear. Peat moss is a great holder of moisture in the ground. It's the best thing you can use. But on the surface, it dries and it'll just blow away.
Don't use straw.
Yeah.
We did that one year with our roses that grow.
Did that.
And it rots, it kind of it has seeds in it, so it will start growing straw. And you have to really break it up to do it. And then at the end, you end up having to remove all of it, and it's not worth it.
Yeah, straw's not good, and be sure if you're looking at any kind of compost and stuff like that, make sure it's very well broken down. If you have a friend that has horses, horse manure works pretty well. It's not very hot as far as high nitrogen, but find out what they're feeding the horses, because a lot of people are very nice to their horses and they feed them Bermuda hay. And horse's stomach is not strong enough to destroy seeds, so you are just planting a lawn that you will have a very, very hard time getting rid of. Yeah. Bermuda grass is It's called devil grass in some areas, and it's very aptly named.
There's some people up in Phoenix who are getting cedar chips and like they're trying different types of wood chips. So that's a possibility to
Yeah,
look
some
into.
people have been using pecan hulls.
Yeah.
We used to be able to get pecan hull. And again, one of the problems with the pecan hulls is a lot of the times they have little bits of nuts and stuff in them, which can draw mice, cockroaches, all sorts of critters into your yard.
I always heard that bark and wood chips and that stuff will, as it breaks down, will release salt and take out your nitrogen, like you said. Is that true?
Some of the bark things are fairly high in salt content, and we certainly have plenty of our own
Yeah,
salt.
we don't get salt here.
Yeah, do not mulch with eucalyptus leaves. They're super, super high salt, so that's one of the things you don't want to use.
Is it okay to use sawdust, like on a lathe? or
Not when
something?
it's raw.
If
You
it's
need to
dry
you
wood?
need to compost it first.
What if it's dry wood? Like dried mesquite or any kind of like a dried oak and
You know, if you're just cutting up firewood, you got some sawdust, you can throw a little on there, but you don't wanna put a thick mulch layer. And it tends to compact and the water won't go through it.
okay.
When it's real fine, like sawdust. I used to get sawdust from Grant Road Lumber years ago. I just go over and empty their bins, but I take it home and put it in my compost pile. I didn't use it straight out of the bin.
Yes.
I've had pretty good luck with the cedar mulch that they sell at the Home Depot, but you kind of have to watch. Some of the bags, they have like kindling in it, it's not really broken down very much, and sometimes you'll get some that's really coarse enough and it's fine enough that you can pack it in there. And it's also an insect repellent, the cedar oil, so it's pretty good too. It'll help cut down on your mosquitoes, but you just have to make sure you pull out the big chunks.
But grow mulch is okay then?
Yeah,
I'm kidding.
yeah, it's a nice, it's well composted,
And you just put it on the top,
yes.
Yes.
like how much?
You want to layer a couple inches.
Okay, thank you.
When we had our nursery, we'd get people to come in and they say, I need mulch for my roses. How many roses do they have? Say 10. Well, I'll take one of those bags over there.
Yeah.
And they'd say, no, you need 10 bags. And I've seen rose gardens all over the United States and quite a few in Europe over the years, and Canada. And you go into public gardens almost anywhere in the country, they have a mulch on their roses 4 and 5 and 6 inches deep. And they're not dealing with 3% humidity at 110 degrees. So I don't know that you could over mulch, other than if you have problems with compaction where the water won't penetrate through it.
Yes.
Is there any problem helping the bud union with the mulch?
No. There's not.
No. Her question was, is there an issue if you get your mulch on too thick and it covers what the bud union on your roses? If it's not completely mounded up like 6 inches high, it's gonna break down and disappear anyway. Yeah, the organic material here just disappears.
So what you said was, if the mulch should cover the graft, that's not a terrible thing?
No.
Because eventually, okay.
No.
Okay, yes.
And it may even actually help with basil breaks and stuff like that to have that extra moisture on the graft. Yes.
Sorry.
Can compost be used? for mulch?
Compost, sure. If you make your own or can find a good
As long
quantity
as
of
it's
it on the
well
market.
broken down.
Yeah, as long as it's not chunky, you know, throw it through a screen if you still have chunks, and throw the screenings back in the pile and let them work a while longer.
So total newbie here, sorry. So, about how long, do you have to re-put that mulch in, like every month or something?
No,
Now, if you do it sometime in the next, say, 30 days,
Then we're good to go.
for the summer. Your next line of defense is shade. And the best thing is if you can locate your roses in the first place in an area where you're gonna get mostly the morning sun to about mid-afternoon, and then get some kind of shade in the hottest part of the day, late afternoon. If you can find that location on your property, that's great.
And it doesn't involve being planted next to large trees.
Right. The thing is, if you do plant next to a tree, you probably will have to do it in a pot, because especially mesquite trees, they're very invasive. We have some mesquite trees in our neighbors who, the roots are already growing through and pulling them out all the time. We actually had one mini rose that we had to totally take out of the pot completely, and 3/4 of it was a mesquite root. And the plant was basically almost dying.
They'll go right up through the drain hole. Yeah.
So,
But
They have
if
to
we
be-
do what you said, like 3 months ago, where you put it on a paver or something,
yes.
it won't go up, right?
Well, not necessarily,
It might-
but,
I
I
had,
mean,
I
it
had
helps
roses next to a
prevent.
fig tree in pots years ago, and I went to move one of them and I couldn't move it, and it was up on bricks.
Oh,
And there was a root right up the side of the brick like this and right up into the drain hole, and it was about that big around.
watch those.
And when I took the rose out, like you said, it was just a solid mass of fig roots. Fig tree was happy.
So you get what you inspect, not what you expect.
So if you have roses in pots, and if they're sitting flat on the ground, you need to go in about once a month and give them a twist to break any incoming roots. And it's much better if you can set them up on a brick.
Yes.
Back to shade.
So, if you're like me and you have no shade in your yard, then you need to manufacture some shade. And basically, on our website, which is rosesocietyoftucson.org, if you look under Rose Care for the month of May, Lou has put a link to the whole article that he wrote about building a shade structure. And it will give you a lot of details about it and how to do it. Basically, we put the shade cloth, it's on a aluminum, basically, frame. And we use conduit pipe, which is the strongest sort of thing to keep it all anchored in. But you put it together like Tinker Toys. You could buy the connections from Stacy's Tools. And then once we got it up, the frame, we measured, how big of a piece of shade cloth we needed. And we ordered it online. Unfortunately, that company is no longer around. But they actually hemmed it and put grommets in it every foot or so of the thing.
Diane, what was that company?
I don't remember even the name of it, but do you have that in the article?
Well, I'm not so sure they're not, I think they're from Georgia, but it's in the article, and the thing that's bad about it is that the postage will kill you.
Yeah, I'm getting it shipped.
You can actually get it made at Arizona Bag Company up in Phoenix.
Oh.
They will custom do it, whatever they have. If you go to their website, they will do the grommets. They will do whatever percentage of shade cloth, because I have it over my carport. Not over my roses, but over my cars.
Arizona bag?
Arizona Bag Company, they've been around forever. They're up in Phoenix. And it's not too, they'll set it down to you. They'll ship it down to you.
So anyway, we use 63% shade cloth. And I know the Master Gardeners sell 40% one. So you can contact them because they sell it by, I think, the yard or something of it, and they'll cut a big piece for you. if you wanna try to do it yourself. You can get a tool to do your own grommets. And I believe you can go to someplace like Joann's or Michael's to get something like that, Harbor Freight. And then it's attached with bungee cords, and you can also buy those bungee cords at Stacy Tools, because they sell them in a bulk thing. So, yes.
If you buy a shade cloth at like Lowe's or Home Depot, they actually will sell, little pieces to help hang it up, and it includes grommets that you can attach to the edge of the shade cloth, and they sell like different anchors and attachment points for it as well. That's what I got last year, so.
The other thing is you can look into recycling things. My son was a pitcher in high school and college, and he had a net, and it was like a half of an A-frame kind of a deal, and basically he had the netting on, and that's what he threw in the backyard practicing pitching for many, many years. And basically the netting all ultimately went bad, but I used that to attach shade cloth to shade my the west side that would shine onto my tomato plants and other vegetables that I have growing. So you could do something like that, look for things like that to also just have a area that just blocks the sun on that side. So that's another way to do that. The thing is, we've been really careful. One thing is, we only have the shade cloth up from usually by May 1st till at least October, sometime in October. When it starts to get into the 90s, then we'll start looking at taking it down. And because of that, you have to be careful where you store it. Do not store it in an area where you might have pack rats, because the pack rats will get into that and eat it and rip it apart. And because we've been careful about where we store it and how we store it and everything, it's lasted so far 10 years and we haven't had any tears, and it's withstood 70-mile-an-hour winds in our backyard. We live out on the west side, so we get hit with a lot of wind. And with that bungee cord, it just kind of bounces along with whatever the weather is and seems to survive pretty well.
One thing you want to do with your roses is wash them off every morning. Make sure that the water in the hose is run out, the hot water, if it's sunny. You cannot burn roses, even if it's 110 out, with water that's not hot. It won't burn. The way a water droplet is shaped on a rose leaf, it does not act like a magnifying glass that would cause burning on the foliage. When we had our nursery and on days when it was breezy and over 105, we would go out about 2 o'clock in the afternoon and just mist water up over the tops of the roses, just to throw a little humidity in there and to try and cool the ground and the plants down a little bit. Never burn a rose bush. So just make sure you run that 150 degree, 60 degree water out of the hose. You know, if it's too hot, put your finger over the end of the hose. It's too hot for the roses too. So, but I wash my roses off every morning. It's not a hard stream. I just do it with my finger and I just wash them down. I have little or no problem with red spider mite, which is a big bugaboo type thing in the summertime. Spider mites are minute little mites, and they pierce the leaf, usually on the underside, and they suck the sap out of it. That's what they do for a living. And that and multiply. So, and the first thing you'll notice is the leaves sometimes will curl a little bit, they'll look a little bit dull. If you flip them over, it almost looks like real fine ground pepper on there. Very, very fine ground pepper. And if you run your fingers across it, you'll end up with little streaks on there from the ones you just got rid of. So, but spider mite can completely defoliate a rose bush in, what, a week? If they get a bad case. So by keeping your plants clean, you can usually pretty much eliminate that. I just do it by hand. I haven't got many roses anymore. Or you can get a water wand with a sprayer on the end and spray up underneath the foliage, because that's where they're going to be, is mostly on the underside.
So if you have your roses spread out a bit like Les, that works really well. My garden, it's pretty cramped together. The roses are close together, they grow into each other. So spider mites are a huge problem. So we have to go a little bit heavy duty. So we use a Fogget brass water nozzle on the end of a hose. We use a heavy volume one that's 4 gallons a minute, and it looks like a little jet, sort of rocket launcher. But it's a little bit stronger than using just your finger and getting up underneath and really blasting them. And
a little more even coverage.
we do it, at least, I recommend that you do it at least 3 times a week. And we do it early in the morning before we go off to work. And that way it gives the humidity for the day and helps them a lot. That's really the main thing, and the other thing is that chili thrips are a problem, and that's basically a thrip that attacks the leaves on the new growth. And those really, you'll start seeing deformed growth and stuff if you do have them. By spraying off your roses on a regular basis, we have found that has kept them really to a minimum. We do have them on a few of our roses that they show up on. I know in Phoenix, there's a lot of people who said that they've had a really huge problem with them over the summer. Not very many people here have said too much about it.
I think our dry landscaping makes a big difference in that, where Phoenix people are flagrant water users and still have lots of lawns and stuff like that. And their humidity is higher, their night temperatures are 12, 14, 15 degrees higher than our night temperatures usually. And the chili thrip is a fairly new thing here. It's fairly common in California. It started about 8 or 10 years ago, and it's become more prevalent. I don't know that I've ever actually seen them, so I'd have to go hunting for them.
We've had a few of them, and the key thing is, as soon as we spot them, we try to cut off that branch, put it in a plastic bag, and throw it in the garbage. Do not let it sit anywhere, compost anywhere, because they'll just keep spreading.
Do not compost the leaves off your roses that have fallen off, because a lot of times they carry spores for diseases and insect eggs, and your compost pile may not destroy those. And when you put that mulch back out there, you may be just reinfesting things with it. So it's better to keep the old leaves and stuff cleaned up underneath your plants. If you do start getting a lot of leaf drop over the summer, be sure to rake those leaves out from under there.
Do grasshoppers hurt rose bushes?
Yep.
And what can you do for that? Or growth?
No.
You had some organic.
I have a box turtle that eats them.
I thought you had a.
Oh, that's the Nolo bait. So if you go to Arbico Organics, they're actually in Oro Valley, but they've got a really nice website. And they have this two-pronged approach to getting rid of grasshoppers and crickets. It's a parasitic nematode that actually only targets mostly crickets, but it'll work on grasshoppers too. It's called Nolobait, N-O-L-O.
And what?
N-O-L-O.
N-O-L-O.
Yeah, it's a popular product, so I hope you can get it. But it because it is so host specific, it's not going to damage or hurt anything else in the garden other than the crickets and grasshoppers.
Grasshoppers are probably one of the hardest things to control,
Yeah.
because you can go out, either pick them off or, board A, board B type thing or something like that, and get rid of all the grasshoppers in your yard at 7 o'clock in the morning, and go back out at 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
10,000.
Okay, I thought I got rid of all these things,
What is
so.
that Oro Valley place called?
Arbico
Thank you.
Organics.
R?
A-R-I-B-I-C-O.
They sell all kinds of beneficial insects and low toxicity
Lots of nematodes.
insecticides and things like that. But many of the things they sell are very, like she said, host specific. They will only kill, they might kill you, but they won't bother her.
Yeah.
Now, is this turtle trained to jump at these grasshoppers?
No, I have to catch them for him and feed them to him.
Well, that's cheating.
Yeah.
Yeah, so-
And is Grubsy gone, gonna hurt anything? Grubs?
Grubs are,
Grubsy, is it called Grubsy?
grubs are the larvae of beetles. They love rose roots,
Yeah.
and they are hard to control. I've been using a product by Bayer, it's called Season Long Grub Control. Season long varies by who you talk to. It says up to 6 months, but I figure 3 months. The grubs we have here primarily are the grubs from the little brown beetles that you see during the monsoon season, and the cicadas that do all the singing in the trees. And they are voracious root eaters, and they don't discriminate between a desert bush and a rose bush. They probably like the roses better. And then the June beetles, now the June beetle larvae will eat roots, and they're about this big. So, but they're very hard to control. I moved about 8 years ago, and I think my yard would probably be declared a toxic waste dump, from where I used to live, from all the stuff I put on trying to kill grubs. So, and there are some organic controls that you can get from Arbico. But grubs will get into pots.
Yeah.
That's,
I dumped a 1 gallon azalea at one time, about 21 grubs in 1 gallon can.
I had a dahlia, was not a rose, I had a dahlia, a dinner plate dahlia. Beautiful thing, it was 5 feet tall, flower like that. Cut the flower and the plant went right over. I dumped out all the thing and there was 275 grubs in there. And it just ate all the inside of the tubers, it just ate right through.
So grubs are a big issue.
Yes. With all the rain and everything last year, we got a lot of bug explosion. And one of the things that happened in our garden was we got scale. Scale is a little tiny bug that makes something that looks like a little tiny hard shell. And they attach themselves to the stems of your rose bush. And you get enough of them on there, it will basically kill that stem.
They just stick on the side and then they suck the juice out.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's a number of different kinds. There's the real flat ones and there's some that are kind of humped up.
So we didn't really realize at first that this was happening. So it ultimately ended up that when we pruned in June, we had to severely cut back 10 of our rose plants. I mean, like all the way to the Bud Union, cut off huge.
In June?
Right. No, in January,
Oh.
sorry.
Jamie's-
Sorry, in January is when we did it. But, there's only one way that we have heard that to really eradicate them or get rid of them, and that is for 3 straight weeks, once a week. You need to use a product called acephate, a chemical called acephate. You have to mix it with Indicate 5, which is a spreader sticker, because if you don't, it will burn everything. So you have to make sure you have that spreader sticker mixed in with it, and you hydrate your plants early, well, you do it the night before and then early in the morning, before it gets too hot, spray that mixture on it. You have to do it for 3 straight weeks, and then when you go to prune in January, you need to, after you're done pruning, spray with a horticulture oil spray that will coat everything and basically make sure that it's all completely dead. So we'll see if this summer, when the rains come back, if these scale come back. But
Acetate's also known as orthene.
right, but,
It's
it's better to buy the actual thing that says, chemical that says acetate. But if you have that problem, give Lou a call, because he can walk you through how to deal with it. Because it was pretty bad, and we have some roses that basically ended up with just only 2 green canes left. And all of them got, it was amazing because all of them got a lot of basal breaks and everything, so we'll see how they come back, if they do or not. So the next thing is fertilizing. So there's always been a controversy about whether or not you have to fertilize in the summer. The old thought was that you never did, and you just let them go. Well, for a lot of us who grew roses during that thought process, you know, our roses struggled, and by September, everything was really struggling. A lot of canes that lost a lot of leaves and things like that. So Lou did an experiment a few years back and started a fertilizing program, and that's outlined. If you go on the monthly care list, he outlines what he's done. But in May, he puts down Osmocote. You could buy the 3-month version that's supposed to last for 3 months, or 6 months version, and you just do that one time.
Osmocote is a time-release fertilizer.
And then at the beginning of each month, from May through September, he puts down milorganite, just sprinkles it around. And the one reason that we liked that particular product is that it has 4% iron in it. So it keeps your leaves pretty green and healthy throughout the whole summer.
How often do you do that?
Once a month.
And what's it called again?
Milorganite, yes. It's basically processed sewage sludge from Milwaukee.
From Milwaukee. It's been around for years, so.
Right.
That's nothing new. It's just ground up sewage.
You can,
organic?
Huh? No.
well, technically, yes.
But it can have all kinds of the sort of other things mixed into it, since it's
It's
coming,
not OMRI listed.
Right.
it's coming out of a sewage plant, so we all know what goes through there.
Lots of bratwurst and beer.
So-
It's that beer that does it.
You can get, a lot, actually Home Depot used to sell it. It was one of their biggest selling fertilizers that they had. And for some reason, some situation happened, and it became so popular that they had a very hard time stocking it. So about the only place you can buy it now is through Ace Hardware. So you can check it out there. You could use other fertilizers though, if you choose. depending
I use the Magnum Grow, which is the water soluble fertilizer that Lou and Diane use. I use it, I think you use it too.
Just during
The bloom season.
bloom season,
Yeah.
but I use Arizona's Best, either the all-purpose or their rose food,
Yeah,
and that's a time release, and you can
yeah.
put a
It's called-
couple per bush on.
Yeah, it's called Magnum Grow. It's a water soluble fertilizer, extremely high quality. It was developed by a chemist in California, Dr. Tommy Cairns. And it's just a really great rose food. I actually use it on all my blooming plants.
Is that one time a month again, or every other week?
You use it about once a month. You know, if you think about how much watering you're doing in the summer, you're constantly leaching all the nutrients out. So that's, you know, I started feeding during the summer because at the nursery, everything was in a 5-gallon can. It was getting ground soap watered every day. And we started realizing that the foliage was getting lighter color. We weren't getting hardly any growth, which we don't really expect a lot in the summertime. But we started feeding at the nursery at least monthly during the summer. And it
So
really
don't
made
do
a big
both.
difference. Huh?
Don't do both,
You probably could.
either or.
Well, Milorganite's a slow release organic
It
fertilizer.
just won't hurt if we do both.
Probably not.
Probably not.
What about
Yeah.
the fish fertilizer? Should we continue that?
You can do that,
You can use that if you want.
Okay.
yeah.
It's-
Fish, fish emulsion's a good fertilizer. It's very low nutrient. I mean, it's, the nitrogen's like 5%.
Is
so
that
it's-
one time
and
a
it-
month?
And it's not readily available, so it has to break down some before the plants can use it. Any organics have to be broken down. The Milorganite, manures, blood meal, fish meal, any of those type of things.
The other thing is, if you get really, really light leaves and you haven't done a whole lot of fertilizing, because a lot of people don't want to when it's 110 degrees or higher. So if you end up with that, you want to look for some kind of chelated iron to put down that will help green it up. You probably only need to do one application in the summer if you have that problem.
You know, chelated iron is iron in a form that keeps it in suspension so the plant can take it out. Some things like iron sulfate, they'll work, but they don't work very fast, and it takes time for them to break down.
Ironite is
Yeah.
another one that never, you know.
Yeah, ironite's kind of a little bit of a hybrid, but I always thought for years it was probably best used as a doorstop.
Yeah.
And not for the iron content in it. But chelating is a way of keeping a chemical in suspension. And they do it for medicine. Yeah. When they treat people for certain things, they use chelation because it keeps it from tying up with other chemicals within the body or the plant.
Do you have any experience with kelp?
Kelp,
Kelp.
trying to get out through it, but I have never used kelp. You know, they make kelp meal, and some of the organic fertilizers contain kelp meal, but I've never used it.
You know, the Dr. Earth vegetable fertilizer, they have kelp in it.
Yeah. I
That's
found a kelp extract on Amazon, and it's supposed to have hormones that help with water retention and drought resistance.
I don't know, I haven't experimented with that one.
So of all the things that I have written down here, are any of these besides chelated iron gonna provide iron to my plant besides Milorganite?
Magnum Grow.
Magnum, so I've got Magnum Grow, I'm pretty well covered.
Right,
And monthly would be okay at this time of year.
I think so.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And you want to make sure when you're going to fertilize that the night before you're watering well, so the plants are hydrated well. And then once you've applied the fertilizer, You wanna watch to make sure that you're not gonna get wilting by 3, if you apply in the morning, by 3 o'clock, make sure you're watching your roses so that you don't have wilting. If you do, you gotta go out and water right then.
You know,
To
last
flush it.
year, June was the hottest month in history. You know, and it was just brutal on the roses, brutal on people and everything else. And then we followed it up with 12 inches of rain in July. But, you know, when temperatures are 105 plus in June with humidities in the single digits in the afternoon and maybe making it up to 18 or 20% at night, you almost can't overwater. I mean, it's just like, if you think you need to water, you do. Just, you know, once the monsoon starts, it gets a little bit tricky because, you know, you might get 2 inches of rain in one
30-minute.
deluge. But if you look out there, how much of it's running off down the street or into some other part of your yard, or hopefully filling your tank up if you have one of them.
I would keep watering. I wouldn't trust the rain's gonna
Yeah.
penetrate
No.
very much.
Yeah. And in pots, you can watch the plants and you'll learn over a while. If the plants normally are nice and shiny green and they get a little bit dull looking, or kind of a bluish dull, then they're usually needing water. If they're starting to wilt, you know.
So the final thing is deadheading your roses. You do get cycles of bloom throughout the summer. So I always use the summer petals to dry and use for potpourri later on in the year, but you need to go down, people always ask me, well, how do you do that? So you go from the bloom, go down to the first 5 leaflet and make your cut just above that, where the leaf is coming out.
You don't just go snap the
Yeah,
dried
don't,
flowers off.
yes.
If you have the flora, or they call the floribundas, where they have 3 or 4, and maybe one is not looking too good, but you don't want to cut off all of them,
You just cut
Just
off
cut
the
the
just
middle
cut that
one.
one and that's okay?
Just clip the middle
Yeah.
one out and let the rest of them grow.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or when they're first forming their buds, go in there and pinch that center one out when it's only, you know, pea-sized, and then that makes,
And you have to spray.
that makes the rest of them all come up and bloom sort of at the same time.
One of the philosophies that's going on in California right now, because they have the chili drip problem so bad, is that some of the people are not deadheading at all on their roses, because they feel that promoting more new growth is just gonna bring in the chili thrips to destroy their plants. I don't know how well that philosophy is working for them.
I'm not sure how well tested
But,
that is.
you know, my experience is if you leave the bloom and it dies, eventually it's going to dry up and fall off at some juncture on the stem. And eventually, some new growth is going to come out at some point, so. But, here in Arizona, I don't feel like there's any problem with deadheading, and we usually do it once a month during the summer. Yes.
I just got a rose bush. Do I handle it exactly the way I am the hybrid teas and floribunda, or is it a little bit different?
You just got it in the mail?
Somebody gave it to me.
Okay. Is it already in a pot?
Yeah,
So is it in a 5-gallon pot?
it's big like this, so maybe a little different.
Oh, then you probably are fine with it, just leave it.
So just do exactly the same as far
Yeah.
as this process.
Yes.
I wouldn't do any transplanting on roses, like from one pot to another bigger pot or anything, till after the monsoon season starts. Either do it right now, within the next few days, because once we get into the high 80s, or into the high 70s and 80s at night, and the extreme low humidity of late May, June, and early July, they're just not gonna be happy no matter how much water you put on them. They're probably gonna be happier in their little pot they're in now that you're used to watering, so.
I've kept new roses that I've gotten in January, and I've kept them in 5-gallon pots, and these are hybrid teas. Tucked them in somewhere under the shade cloth situation, and kept them watered, and kept them there until November before I planted them in a permanent spot. So, and they've survived.
What's the name of that beautiful peach rose?
Oh, I brought these are some of the new minis that are out. Dave Bang is one of the new up-and-coming hybridizers. He's been doing it for 4 or 5 years, maybe even longer, but in commerce for at least 5 years. This one is called Squirrely Pop. He's really known for a lot of the stripy, crazy looking ones. It's yellow and dark pink. This one's called Strawberry Kisses. And Ryan Regier, who's one of the big exhibitors up in Mesa, Tempe area. This is his favorite now of minis. He and I go back and forth a lot about the miniatures and stuff, but it's really, really popular. Both of these have been on the trophy tables in California and at the district conventions, and they do really well here. And you can buy Dave Bang roses from K&M Nursery in Mississippi. And they have a really nice presentation on their website of a lot of his roses. And he also has some floribundas. And I don't know anybody who's actually growing them at this moment, but I'd be interested in finding out how they're doing because the pictures look fabulous. So, I don't know. And this one is from Wisconsin Roses, this kind of pale pink, and it's called RBG. And she's probably rolling in a grave right now, as of today. But anyway, this rose actually won at, I think, one of the national, that was exhibited by Steve Singer. He's the owner of Wisconsin Roses and the hybridizer. Yes.
So you've actually invested in these 2 miniature roses that are fairly new?
Yeah, I bought them from K&M and from Wisconsin Roses. We buy quite a few roses from Wisconsin Roses. For their hybrid teas, they sell maiden roses, and which is basically a rootstock that has the bud on it. And we grow it from the bud.
It's a stick with a bulb.
And basically, yeah, and you basically grow the rose, the plant, and it takes 2 years.
So it's interesting that you would buy roses that have been created in Wisconsin, but plan on being successful with them in Arizona because we have so many different weather things. But you must have figured out the water shade thing.
Well, that and also we look at what wins, because we're always trying to find the best exhibition roses, and basically we also look for heavily petaled roses because those tend to hold their form best. And we also look at you know what the form is, because you can have heavily petaled roses that don't have any form too, that aren't consistent in that. But we know, Lou and I have done this for 40 years, so we know a lot of hybridizers. We know, we used to be judges, so we know a lot of different people, a lot of the exhibitors, and so we all.
Sometimes you get a bush that just doesn't like
Right.
it here, you know?
That's true too.
When we had our nursery in Green Valley, we get people that come in, I want this rose because it's so good in Wisconsin or wherever. Sorry, you're gonna be very disappointed with that rose here. and you'd suggest something else, and they'd say, well, I grew that in Wisconsin, it was terrible, and I'd say, yeah, well, that's great here, you know, it's just, you know, it's a whole different climate thing, and they all wanted to grow the rose that grandma grew, or their mom grew, and, you know, there's way better and nicer roses, and you know, I know there's sentimental value to it, but water and space and time to me, are a little more important. I'm not gonna sit and water and fertilize a rose that's gonna be a dog, basically. I've told this story before. I won a trophy many, many years ago with the purple one. That was the greenhouse rose. That was the first purple rose.
Neptune?
No.
Eptide?
Angel,
Huh?
angel face?
No, way back.
Sterling silver.
Sterling silver.
Yeah.
Yeah, sterling.
I win!
Yeah. Sterling silver was the first sort of mauve or purple rose pretty much to come out. And it was developed as a rose to be grown in greenhouses for the florist trade. And the roses that are bred for the florist trade and for the garden use don't cross over very well.
Yeah.
They're just the way that they're genetically bred. And I won a trophy with it, and I dug it up and threw it away the next week. Because I'd been watering and feeding it for like 5 years, and it was the only decent bloom I had in 5 years. Just happened to hit it that day, so.
Les also used to be a judge.
Yeah.
So, yeah, when you do this for a long time and you go to a lot of shows, you meet a lot of people and everybody shares information and stuff. There used to be roadshow.com, and they would list all the winners of all the shows from around the country. And so that's always a good source. It used to be a good source. Now I don't know what people are going to do. I hope somebody comes along and does something. But there's Horizon Roses, and I think what one is Suzanne taking over? Suzanne?
Horizon Roses.
Horizon Roses.
Basically, that's a little pamphlet or booklet that has exhibitors from all over the country talking about what their favorite new roses are. And it is a great, great resource. If you're looking for newer ones that are either small roses or hybrid teas or floribundas, old garden roses, whatever it might be, they talk about it. And so, you know, Bob Martin, he was president of the American Rose Society, who lived in the San Diego area. He passed away a few months ago, and so he was a guy that ran roadshow.com for a long time, but since he passed away, that website is gone, and nobody's picking it up. But they do have Horizon Roses, which Suzanne Horn's going to be picking up, so that's something that you really ought to look at. It comes out every fall.
Also, if you're a member of the American Rose Society, you get the handbook for selecting roses, and so you want to look for anything that's a 8, 7.5 or above, I would guess. And for Arizona, you really want to look for a high petal count. So you want to look for like the 40, what would you
Yeah,
say?
mid to high 30s on petal count. Remember that reading descriptions in catalogs are a little flamboyant sometimes. They embellish things occasionally. Sometimes the photographs are not very representative of that particular variety. I remember years ago, Jackson and Perkins had a picture of the same pink rose with 2 different names on it in their catalog. So that sometimes can be an issue. And they make every rose sound like it's
Stellar.
it's magic, you know. So, and one of the best ways to find out for varieties that you like is to go to the rose shows like this last month. Because you'll see roses that were primarily grown in the desert. You know, Phoenix, people come down and exhibit. We've had people come over a few times from over in Palm Springs area, and, you know, that's brutal hot
They have
too.
this
So,
same
you know, if they can grow roses in Palm Springs and bring them over here and they look that good, you know that they're probably a little better adapted to our climate.
But everybody has their favorites of what they want to grow. I've met people who only want fragrant roses, they don't want anything that does not smell. However, it's quite interesting because I've had people go through my garden and there are only 3 fragrant roses in my entire garden that I smell. However, I have people going up and they're smelling all the roses. Oh, this smells so good, and I'm thinking, I've never smelled a thing on that rose.
You've had COVID for years, you didn't know.
So it's pretty interesting, because I think, your mind, your mind plays a trick on you, is what I think it is that you're anticipating something, and you think you smell that, but you really don't. Yes.
So what are your 3 favorite roses?
Well, we had Secret, which we don't have anymore right now, but we had Neptune is really the most fragrant, and trying to think of what the other
Neptune's a
one is.
lavender,
It's a,
Okay.
Yeah.
mauve officially,
yeah. So, yes.
according to the ARS.
I think it was 6 years ago when I first came to a meeting here. You recommended help me find roses, the photos on there,
Mhm,
and that was a really big help to me
mhm.
when I was picking out roses. And the other question I had is, what is the minimum amount of sunlight that a rose can have to grow?
Basically 6 hours,
And that would be pretty much year round,
yes.
you know, the sun flip-flops back and forth, north to south. Most roses, like planted on the north side of the house or something like that, are gonna struggle and they're gonna reach for the light. And not bloom very much.
Because they're only gonna get sun during June.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
June 21st, and
Yeah,
then
it's just-
it turns around and heads the other direction, so,
So
yes.
we had a question over here.
I know this isn't the subject, but could you touch really briefly on the soil? Like, is there a place to buy good for potting soil, or do you gotta mix it yourself? You're gonna put it in a pot? Do you have a place?
Well, my personal mixture is to buy Kellogg's Patio Plus at, at Home Depot or Lowe's,
Uh-huh.
and then mix, what is it?
4 parts.
4 parts.
4 parts?
4 parts to, what, a gallon?
No, 4 parts of that, 1 part peat moss.
Peat
and 1
moss.
part, perlite.
And then you want perlite mixed in with it. And I grow almost everything that I have in a pot in that medium, and everything grows great, even fantastic tomatoes. So,
That's the best potting soil I found. There's a lot more expensive ones. That
Right.
has actually gone up.
yeah, this has
Quite a
gone up
bit.
to almost
But-
$7.
Yeah. But it's a good potting soil.
Kellogg's is good.
Mhm.
I got a couple of bags about 6 months ago that I think had been sitting in the bottom of a bog somewhere or something. They weighed about 60 pounds. And I could not get the stuff to dry out. I finally just chucked it because it was just like glue.
Okay, and we have another question?
Do you have any suggestions for what I can use for, I have a wall and the reflected heat, I have a couple of pots, I'm thinking of just moving them away from there, but that reflection from the wall seems to just be way too much.
You can put up some shade cloth directly over it.
Oh, on the wall?
Yes.
Use a light
Attach
colored,
it.
if you can find some light colored shade cloth, they do make a sort of a beige color.
Or even a
Just
silver.
over the wall.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and that would help cut the heat.
And that would cut the heat down. I mean, that would be the simplest thing.
Okay.
Or move.
Otherwise, just move those pots away from it.
It'll be more than it'll come out.
Yep.
All right,
All right,
Okay,
thank
thanks.
you.
thank you.
Thank you.